Hi everyone, welcome back to another For Those Who Code video. This channel is where we learn and share skills about design and development. If you want to grow your skills and learn new things that's coming up, please like, share, and please do subscribe for more. In this video, we'll be building a currency exchange converter app right from scratch. Let's take a look at what we'll be building. We'll be building this particular application step by step. If you want to skip to a specific part of the video, you can obviously click the timestamps added in the video description down below as well. Currently, I'm spinning up my local server to run this particular app right now. And if I hit on refresh, then we can see a loader that has been loading until we fetch all the data. And initially, we have a disabled button where we don't have any amount added. And we straight away have three fields here, which is amount, from, and to. And let's enter any amount here, and as you can see here, our button has been enabled, and we can select between the countries that we have here, and I just want to select Canada for now, and to would be US dollar. That's fine, and let's hit convert. And as you can see here, our currency has been converted to US dollar. So we added 100 amount of Canadian dollar, and it converted us to US dollar. And obviously we can click on this particular icon right here to exchange between the from and to, and you want to convert from US dollar to Canadian dollar. And if I hit on convert, then this should update as well. So this is pretty much of the application that we are trying to build. And about the packages and tech stack that we'll be using to complete this application are React, which is a JavaScript library for creating user interfaces, Vite, which is a front-end build tool, something similar like Webpack, Rollup, Partial, Snowpacks, Tailwind CSS, which is a utility-first CSS framework we'll be using, Headless UI, which is an unstyled accessible UI component designed to integrate with Figma CSS, and lastly, Axios, which is a promise-based HTTP client for browser and Node.js we'll be making to calls to our API endpoints. So enough of the talk, let's start coding. So I'm inside of official documentation of Vite, and let's head on to get started with Vite. So Vite is a French word pronounced as vite, and it means fast. And it's a build tool similar to the things like Webpack, Rollup, Snowpacks, and all those greatest build tools out there. And the primary aim is to provide a faster and leaner experience for modern web projects. So that's what Vite aims for. So taking a look at the documentation further down below, as we can see here, we have a couple of commands that we can add to initialize a complete Vite project from scratch. So we'll just use npm for now. Let's copy this one. And further down, as we can see here, the supported templates has been also configured to us. So these templates are pre-configured, and you can find on with the most popular frameworks out there like Vue, React, Preact, and Svelte, and good frameworks out there. And it also surprisingly supports Vanilla.js as well. So let's head on to our terminal right here, and I want to use Hyper for now for our terminal right here. And let's move on to our desired directory, which is desktop for now. I'll just stick with it. And let's paste up the command that we just copied, which is npm init@vitejs/app. And Vite is smart so that we haven't specified our project name, so it asks for the project name. So if we just skip our project name for now, it's just Vite project, so which is great. So we'll just select React for now, and just go with just plain React without TypeScript for now. And just go to our CD inside of project, and inside here we can hit npm I to install all our packages inside of node modules. After the installation, let's bring it up inside of our VS Code. All right, so it looks like everything has been pre-configured to us, and taking a look at the packages.json file, it's pretty lean. It's just dev dependency of Vite, which is pretty much great. Now we have a scaffold Vite app with the React. Now the next step would be creating a Tailwind inside of this project. So let's bring up our terminal and add Tailwind to this. To add Tailwind CSS inside of project, we have pretty much command that we need, which is we need this particular command which says to install Tailwind CSS latest, post CSS latest, and auto prefixer latest as a dev dependency with the dash capital D flag. And let's hit on enter. And after the installation of these packages, we further needs to create a package.json file. As you can see here, these things has been added to our dev dependency. And to initialize our not a package.json file but a post CSS file, we can initialize a post CSS file with npx tailwind css in a -p, which will create a post CSS file for us. So as we can see here, our post CSS config.js has been created, which is pretty much fine. So now the next step would be going to our src directory right here, and we want to clear up all the files that we don't need here, and we will create a simple file structure here. Let's call it images, and further on we can add other folders here. Let's call it components, and let's add other files like style sheet as well. So inside of our style sheet here, we want to add our Tailwind styles. So inside here, I will just create index.js .css, and we'll paste in the styles that's needed for Tailwind to run. And obviously you can enable the JIT mode compiler, but we won't be using JIT for now. Let's head on towards our purge right here. So we can add a few lines to purge our CSS with Tailwind. So I will just copy the few lines here, or just add everything right here. So we have also added a minimum height of 50, because all the text field that we need is like 50 pixels taller. So we just added this so that we won't be added this later. So and also added purge for this. Let's hit save, and let's go to our index.css, which is fine. I just want to delete all the files that we don't need, which is app.css, and also favicon. Let's move on to our images right here, and also our logo. Go to images, and we still don't want to touch it. And index.css, we can just delete this, we don't need it. And main.css and app.css will be pretty much fine for now. And let's delete everything that we don't need here, and let's also bring up our other things here. Let's delete everything inside of header, and we will call this one this is our app. All right, let's hit save, and let's go inside of main. And inside of main, we don't want index.css. And let's hit save, and what have we done wrong? It says a comma is mistaken. So it looks everything is fine. So I think everything is fine, except we haven't imported this particular index inside of our main.js file right here. So let's go ahead and import that particular inside of our app.js file. Okay, so inside here we want to just import everything that we need, all the styles, and we are also not using the use state for now. So let's remove this. So after hitting install, let's run npm start, because it should run our, oh, there's no start command. All right, let's go ahead and add start inside of our script here. So start, and we want to add a start, which is Vite. So we have left out a comma here. Let's hit on save, and let's hit on npm start. And as you can see here, our localhost 3000 has been started to us. So it says Vite app, and it's loading for us. And all right, and it says this is our app, which is pretty much fine. Inside of console, we don't have any errors till now, which is pretty much great. All right, now the next step would be like to check whether the Tailwind CSS is really working or not. So to check that particular stuff, we have pretty much classes that I have pretty much ready here. So I'll just bring it in and format this a little bit. I've just added the Tailwind classes, which is the text color green of 400, and text would be large. Let's hit save, And if we take a look, here we have it, and it says that we have a Tailwind and Vite and React project successfully running without any errors, which is pretty much great. So now the next step would be like creating components for our application. So I've already brought in some screenshot of our application that we are creating. So now to planning out a component, we just generally want one component to avoid prop drilling situation here. And obviously we don't want to send down props to the parent component, as it will be pretty much hectic to cover that cases. So we're just making one component for now, and then it would be just 3 fields right here and an icon right here, and obviously it uses Tailwind style buttons, and obviously we have a text right here. So first of all, let's create a component and let's call it converter.jsx, and inside here let's bring on everything that we need here. Let's paste it here, and we will obviously need to import React, and we will call this one converter app, or let's call it converter names, and we will also export this one and add a few lines right here. Remove this, and this is converter. Okay, looks fine. So let's save this one, and let's try to import that particular component inside of our app.jsx here. And inside here I want to bring in that particular component that we created, which is converter from components. So this is pretty much our app, and we obviously want to create a div and call it a class name, but we won't be using this class name because we will be just purely using Tailwind CSS. So we won't be using any external class name except of Tailwind CSS. So inside here, I'll just make a div and paste in the converter right here, or let's add this particular converter inside of this tag, and let's add a class name here. So for the class name, as we have already planned out, we want to have max width for this particular Vite as the container that we see here, which can be max width and a little bit of padding to the top and the bottom. That would be pretty much fine for now. So I'll just add max width of 4 XL and margin of auto, because we want to align it to the center, and margin padding bottom of 6 and padding top of 14. So this would be pretty much fine for now. Let's save this one and see it inside the browser. And as we can see here, our converter is pretty much aligned to the center, and we have pretty much of space in between and around it. So yeah, it's pretty much right. So now let's move on to our converter.jsx and add some Tailwind styled input fields right here. First of all, let's remove our div right here, and let's replace it with section tag. So inside of our section tag here, we want to add a class name. So it will be all the Tailwind classes that we want to add. So taking reference to this screenshot right here, we want to add padding of top of around 14 pixels and background of white, and padding of x-axis and padding bottom, and also a bit of shadow to here. So for our class names right here, padding top of 16, or let's say 14, and background of white, vise white, and then padding bottom of 6 or around 14, a padding of x-axis of 6, and a bit of shadow. So this would be pretty much fine for now. So let's also add a heading here. So the heading can just say currency exchange rate. All right. So after the heading has also been added, we want to style our heading as well. So let's add a class name of to our heading. So it would be a pretty much big and black. So it would be text of black, text of 2XL, and margin bottom of 10, and font of semi-bold. Okay, after this one, let's save it and see it in the browser, and it's pretty much looking pretty decent for now. Let's add a bit of background to our body as well. So inside of our HTML here, we want to add a background of BG gray of around 200. By the way, if you are wondering, this is a Tailwind extension that has been added inside of our VS code right here. So if you want this similar feature, you can just head on to the extension of right here and search for Tailwind extension. So let's hit on save, and as we can see here, it's pretty much of darker. So let's add just 100. This would be pretty much fine. So now next step would be adding the text fields right here. So for the text fields, we will just grab the text fields from the Tailwind documentation, and inside there we have pretty much of the things that we need, the text fields. So for the text fields, I want to open up a form tag right here, and which action don't want to specify action right away, but I want to later on add on some with handler for that one. So I'll just grab this thing from the Tailwind documentation. So you can find the Tailwind documentation and go to resources. I think we have pretty much of value, so we will just add a random value for this. We just add Q because it's complaining about the value. So we can't type here because we are not listening to the changes and setting up state. So this is pretty much looking decent for now. So now the next step would be wrapping this particular our label and input tags inside of our div. So I will just add this inside of another div right here. I'll just call it with a class name of flex, and flex row, it would be a row, and a margin bottom of 6, and a little bit of gap in between the elements of 9, and items is center. So after pretty much having this one, we will have a further next classes or next div here with a class name of flex1, because we want to grow this particular element to the size that we have here. So let's add a label down there, and let's also get this div replicated 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, and 4 time, because we want something like 4 grid structure in a sense. So 1, 2, 3, 4, which would be pretty much fine, because we will be replacing it with select boxes 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. We are just making grids. So now for adding the further UI elements, as we discussed before, we'll be using our Headless UI. So let's move on to Headless UI, and let's go to our Headless UI right here. And as you can see here, we have pretty much drop down menu and list box. Let's go to Headless UI website rather, and go to list select, and we don't want to use this list select, but instead we want to use a different select. Let's see. So we have this select menu, and yeah, this is what I'm talking about. We have this select fields. So if we go to code, this is pretty much free code that has been provided us. So we'll be using this particular free code right here. Let's grab our import, all the import statement that we need, and we will just be importing everything right here. And also we want to stop our server and install our Tailwind Headless UI. So to install Tailwind Headless UI, I think we should install it with some pretty much command. So let's see, what do we have. So inside of Tailwind Headless UI, we can head on to the documentation, which should be this one. So inside here, let's see, let's go to the GitHub repo and let's go to Headless UI React. Down here, we can see here npm install Headless UI React. All right, let's grab it and let's also install Headless UI React. After the installation, we are pretty much okay, but we haven't used any of these inside of our template here. So let's close this one. We are pretty much okay with that. And let's grab all of these right here. So also the people that we see here, these are dummy data. We'll grab all the data that we need and add inside of our outside of the function. So yeah, so now everything looks fine, but except we want to add few more fields right here, which is this particular field. So we want to replace this with the field. So we want to replace right here. So right here we want to grab this list box that we see here, grab everything that we see here until here, and grab a list box and paste it right in here. So obviously we haven't copied everything. We have left out this particular thing which is needed because it's a default selection of these select fields right here. So if we head towards our browser, but we haven't really spin up our local server, so npm start or just Vite, and it says we have some problem here. Oh, the solid icons is not installed. So it comes from React or Tailwind hero icons. So head towards Tailwind hero icons, and inside of hero icons here, we can go to documentation and head towards down part where we can see npm install hero icons React. Let's copy it and paste it right here. And after this installation, I guess everything would be working fine because we have imported everything right. So let's take a refresh, and it says cannot connect to a server. I think it's just 3000 for now. Yeah, it's 3000. So let's see, it should be running fine. As we can see here, it's running totally fine, right? So we'll be fixing the height of this, and if you remember, we have added some height of 50 pixels right here, mini height 50. We'll be making the use of these height in that particular part. So let's add another icon over here. As we can see here, we have this icon and another select box right here. So to add that icon and select box, I want to add another select box for that one. So I will just grab this one and call it selected one, and set selected one, and selected two, and set selected two. So after this has been done, let's go to here and see whether we have selected one added. All selected should have selected one. So after adding all selected one, let's save it and see it in the browser whether it's working fine or not. And it looks like there are some errors. Let's take a look at the error value of prop on change handler. Okay, that's fine. We'll fix that later on. Inside here, we need to add another snippet of list box that will grab it from our list box here and paste here inside of this flex one that we see here. So this would be pretty much fine, but we should rename our selected to selected to. And let's hit save, and let's take a look at the browser. What do we have? And as we can see here, our assign to has been added. This is pretty much fine, right? Because we will have a toggle right here. So inside of our amount there, we will just add a toggle. So I'll just grab the icon that we need for the toggle element. So, and inside of our second flex box right here, let's replace it with these toggle boxes. And as you can see here, we have pretty much of a comma error. So I am pretty much having this comma right here. So now everything looks fine, except we have this expanded one right here. To get rid of that one, we just remove flex one from that div right here, because we added flex one here, flex one to this one, flex one to this one, and flex one to this one, which would expand the given space proportionally, so that it would create great proportion in between. So let's remove that flex one from here. So I just want to remove this one. So let's see it in the browser. As we can see here, we have successfully added everything that we need, except we have some errors here because we have the value prop of the field without the on-chain handler. So I think we have made some mistakes there. So I'll just grab the buttons that we need for our project right here. So for the buttons, we will bring up the div that I have already created, and we want to bring it down before our section ends right here, after the form field is over. So we are having pretty much a lot of markups inside here, but we will, again, we have this comma that's quite extra right here. So yeah, this one. So let's remove it, and taking a look at the browser, it's pretty much fine. It's pretty much to the direction that we need. All right, the now next step would be populating these data that we need inside of these drop downs right here. So to populate the data that we need inside this drop down, we need to take into consideration of 3 endpoints in total for overall the application. For just the drop down, just 2 endpoints. One endpoint for getting the maps, and another endpoint for getting the names. So let's take a look at the endpoints that we'll be making the use of. So we'll be making the use of this particular site, axe.com, for taking a reference to the endpoints for our conversion, our exchange rate. So taking a look at this particular UI right here, our UI is pretty much influenced by this particular UI. So I try to replicate the UI that we see here, which is really great. So this is pretty much totally interactive. So I changed this, it changes here as well, but we will be just sticking with what do we have here. All right. So to start with this one, we need to first create an account if we don't have one inside of auth.axe.com, as you can see here in the top. And if you already have an account, then you can go and hit to this particular endpoints that we see here, which is cdapi.axe.com /v1/currencies. If you already have account, then you should be prompting with this message, and after logging in, you should be returned with these data. So inside this data, what do we have is ISO, which is the short form of the country, and the country name inside here. So these two are the data that we will be consuming from this particular endpoint, and we will further have another endpoint to make the conversion for the exchange rate. So to make into consideration about these two, and the another endpoint that we'll be using is this particular endpoint, restcountries.eu rest v2/all, as you can see here. And the response it gives is we have the flags here, and we still have the same thing like IOC, as you can see here, which is CIOC, which is pretty much should be similar to what do we have ISO here. So we'll be taking into consideration about these and mapping out all of these inside of the UI that we have here, and also added fixes to the height of the select fields. And obviously we are pretty much ready to implement our endpoints. So let's go back to our code, and inside here, first of all, I want to bring up Axios, npm I Axios. And after the installation of Axios, meanwhile, we can create .env file here. And we also need another package, by the way, which is the .env package itself. So I'll just grab the command, which is npm install .env dash or just one dash .env dash save. And after hitting this one, we should so it's npm i.env, and I've already added it. And if we take on a look at package.json file, then we have pretty much added everything that we need. So this is pretty much everything that we need, which is pretty much fine for now. And I'll just close it for now. And then inside of our .env file, I'll just behind the scene add all the environment variables that we need, which consist of username, password, currency URL, and country URL, and also the conversion URL for later on. So I'll just add in here. So after adding all the environment variables inside of .env file, we now can head towards our converter.js. And first, let's bring up Axios to make our API request. So we will just grab on the import statement of Axios and paste it right here. And obviously, we want to make the use of use effect hook as well. So we will also need some fragments, and use state can be imported from React in one line. So I'll just add these. After adding all the packages that we'll be needing top here, we haven't made the use of use effect. So first of all, let's make the use of use effect hook. So inside of our converter names right here, we can just add this statement or this piece of code, which is just invokes a function called map currency data. So we really haven't made this function yet, but we will definitely make that particular function. So before we move on to that particular function, I just want to grab in a couple of states that we need for the application. And here we have selected 1 and selected 2, which is pretty much fine, but we still want to grab other states that we need. So I'll just add other states and just add all list, which holds the state for all the lists that we have, and set all lists will set the list itself, and the amount that we entered inside of this text field will be stored in this particular constant, and this set amount will set that amount, and obviously the exchange rate would be stored in this particular use state hook called exchange and set exchange. All right, after these use state has been added to our application right here, we can further move on to creating our first function to get all the currency that we need. So to get all the currency that we need, we'll grab a function that I have written here, which is uh, get currency data. So get currency data will get the data from the URL that has been placed inside of .env files. But also another thing that we need to notice is we have to make changes inside of our vite.config to work on to the URLs. So I'll just import the .env inside here. We haven't imported .env, so I'll just replace everything with this piece of code so that we have imported .env and initialized .env config right here, and also define our environment variables right here inside of our viteconfig.js, just like this. So after adding our config right here, we also need to obviously add inside of our .env files. After adding that, we can further get currencies, is pretty much okay. So after this has been done, we will also create another function to get all the countries data. So this brings up all the data from the country's URL that we have here, which is here. This has all the countries URL. So we'll be grabbing all the names of the countries here and ultimately returning the flags from this particular function right here. So after this async function, we will create another function which will take these two asynchronous function inside it. So this function is called map currency data, which waits for this particular function and this particular function to resolve, and later on we will map the object, which is the currency data that is returned from this particular function, I suppose. Yeah. And then after mapping over, we need to find a country with the country currency dot code, which is equal to the object ISO. So what we are doing here is object ISO is, for example, we have this country name right here, right? And we have the alpha code right here. We are matching the country currencies code, which is country currency code. All right, so it's currency. As you can see here, inside of our endpoints of REST countries, REST v2, that's all. We have currencies and a code right here, which is AFN. We are finding all the currencies which matches this particular code AFN to this particular ISO right here. So it's just matching everything over, and if the match is found, we will grab the country flag, and then we will create a spread the object and add the flag there. So it would consist of the flag and the object originally. So this way we can just set one flag and set two flag. These are the values that we will be setting to our select fields right there, and obviously select all fields will be country list with flags, and lastly we will just add the loader, which is to false. But the one thing is to be noticed, we haven't added any loaders up here, so we'll also add the loaders for the state loaders, which shows up loader and hides the loader as per needed. So these are pretty much the function that we need. So another thing that we need is to create onSubmit handler. So to create the onSubmit handler inside of our forms right here, we need to specify the form to have onSubmit, right? So onSubmit can be just onSubmit, and we will invoke that particular onSubmit function right here on the top. So right here, I'll just add this piece of code, which I've already written, which is an asynchronous function which invokes when the submit handler is, when the form submits. And we are preventing the default refresh. And there's a try and catch block, where inside of try block we get the conversation URL, which is the URL that has been added inside of our Vite config, and we are from there we are taking this particular endpoint. So this particular endpoint, as you can also see in the project description down below, and grab the project code. This is the endpoint that we are trying to hit, where we'll take this from value and to value and the amount. It's all from the state. So if you can see here, we have selected 1, selected 2, and amount. It's all taken from the state, and we are hitting the endpoint and getting back the results, which is from, to, amount, and results, and ultimately setting the exchange right here with an object, because we have set exchange initialized as an object right here. So this is pretty much it. The last thing that we need to do is we need also to add a function to check an object. Before we move to that particular function, I want to replace this particular snippet right here with the real data. So we have the person right here, which is coming from this particular array right here. So I'll just remove this person people array, and I will add the data that has been returned with the API calls. So inside of our first drop down right here, I'll just add these lines. So where we have this list box, we will just remove everything from here to here, and replace it with this particular fragment to this particular fragment right here. And what have we done is we have mapped over all the data that we received from the API inside of this list right here. If we take a look at that particular snippet we just added, we can see that we have the select one, and we are accessing the object dot flag with this, and obviously the currency name. So if we take a look at this select one right here, we have from, to, amount, and results. We are just mapping that right here. This is basically the output. So we are just taking these values stored inside of our state and accessing it inside of our templates right here. All lists.map, which contains of all the list, and we are looping over all the list right here. So you can also grab the code down below, and let's hit a save, and let's take a look at what do we see here in the browser. And it says it's unable to connect. Let's start up our server with npm start or vite, and then let's hit on refresh, and it says people is not defined because we have removed the people array, which was the array first, and replaced it with this one. So I'll just add all the needed snippet for the other loop as well right here. Meanwhile, we also need to add few images right here, which is spinner. So I'll just grab a spinner icon and add to our images right here. It's called spinner.svg, and I'll just add the snippet right here, and also a flag.svg. We also need to create a flag. If we don't have any flag or in response from the API, we will render this flag. So it's just flag.svg, and we will just add a flag here and hit save, and inside spinner let's hit a save. And if we restart our server right here, we have successfully running our server down here. So let's take a quick look at what changes that we made recently. So first of all, we just removed the people array that was in top. That was a default selected array, and we added few codes right here, which is check object. So this particular function will check whether we have the object as a response from an API. If there is no object from that API, it doesn't render this particular thing right here, which is this is a conversion market mid rates. If there is an response from the API, if the object is not empty, it would print out this particular thing. So we have used a pretty much of conditionals right here. Whether we have this function returns true or false, it depends upon this particular thing, which is pretty much fine. And another thing we also added is selected to, and we also grabbed selected to dot flag from the API and selected to dot currency name from the API, and also added the list and mapped over all the lists that we grabbed from an API. And obviously we also added one last function right here, which is swap conversation. So this is pretty much interesting. So swap conversation is just an on-click handler which invokes this particular function, which just sets the selected one to selected two and selected two to selected one. If one has some other countries, it selects one to and sets two as the state of one, and if two has other thing, it sets up the selected for one. And this is pretty much it. So this was quite a long number of lines inside a single file. So this was pretty much challenging to explain for me as well. So I hope everything is working pretty much fine. So let's head on to the browser and let's wait for everything to resolve. So as you can see here, our application is successfully loading without any errors, and we have a default of disable button if we don't have anything in the amount state, which we have right here, which is this particular amount. And if we take a look at downwards right here, we have set a condition where if there is no amount, we have this classes added. If there is amount, we have this classes added. That's pretty much straightforward. So if we just entered 100 for now, we can also see all the list has been populated with the data that we fetched from the API, and also mapped our names with the flags as well. And these two lists are this particular state that we see here, which is all list. So these are just mapped data with all list. And if we just hit convert, then we should see the converted rate. And if we click on this one, it swaps the selection between two states actually. So this is pretty much it. This was pretty much long lines of code, and also I experimented with the headless UI, so that's why it's bit of class of a mess right here. But yeah, this is pretty much it. Before we end our video on our currency converter app, I want to thank Kastjan, who created this application before, which can be found in React.js examples, which I took inspiration from and recreated it writing right from scratch. Thanks a lot. So guys, in this video we understood and learned on how we can make a workable currency exchange converter application right from scratch using a third-party API providers. Thank you for watching till the end. I assume I have explained my best efforts to make you clear. If you guys want to learn more about design and development stuffs, please like, share and subscribe with a click down below. I'll be trying to make more better videos. See you in the next one.